Hey guys, so I know it's been a while since I've done any recording. It's been like crazy busy, um, but I finally found time to do a quick video. First things first, I want to say thank you guys for all the love you've been showing for the videos. I'm happy that I'm able to help you guys kind of take it to the next level with the wheels and lowering stuff like that. I do read the comments, and I noticed there have been requests for certain cars. One of the ones I've noticed was the R8 style kids ride-on car. So thanks to our friends over at BigToysDirect.com, we were able to get one in. Shout out to them. So this is the car we'll be working with. It's the kids ride-on R8 style car that we got from BigToysDirect.com. As you can see, there's a good amount of wheel gap going on in the front and the rear. I would say it's about 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch. Let's take a look with our tape measure. So to be safe, I think we will go ahead and do 1.25 inch. 1.5 inch is going to give you a little bit of wheel tuck where it's going to actually go up, in here a little bit. But when you go up in here, you're going to have to start cutting. And if you're not interested in starting to cut into the body, then playing it safe will be the best way to go about it. However, as we're going along, I will show you at what point you will be able to go lower if you want to go lower, and you'll be able to do so at your own discretion. Just a quick side note, I would recommend that you watch the whole video first before you actually try to attempt it yourself. Just to have an idea of what you're getting yourself into, because you don't want to start and then realize it's a little bit too much, or you're in too deep, or you don't have some of the material or tools available to complete the task. So watch the video, and if it seems comfortable enough for you to try it yourself, then go ahead and try it yourself. That's my recommendation. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is remove the steering wheel. Once you remove the steering wheel, basically it's this bolt right here, and it's a nut on the other side. So you kind of screw this out, and if it doesn't pop out, you could kind of push in, try to push in the middle and pop this screw out from the other side once the nut is off. Then once we pull that off, we're going to take these two screws, and that's going to also allow us to kind of lift the dash and remove the windshield. The reason I'm removing the steering wheel and the windshield is because we're going to flip the car over and work, with it flipped over. So it's going to be the steering wheel, it's going to be the windshield, and it's going to be the seat. Once we remove those three things, then we'll be good to flip it over, and then we'll be able to get into the actual quote unquote suspension work. As you can see, I replaced the two screws back for the dashboard. We removed the windshield. The seats are out, and the steering wheel. So let's go ahead and get her flipped over, and let's see what we're working with. Now that we have our car flipped over, we could kind of go ahead and take a look at what we're working with. In the rear, it's all plastic, and in the front, as you can see, we have a mini subframe going on. So basically what we're gonna have to do is readjust this subframe to get the car a little bit lower in the front. And the rear, it'll be a matter of just simply drilling higher holes and reinforcing it. So let's go ahead and get our wheels off and get started on working on the subframe first. Now the wheels are held on by these little clips, so you can go ahead and remove all 4 clips, and the wheels will just pop right off. You can do this by either using a flathead or a needle nose pliers. I will be using a needle nose. Now that our wheels are removed, we're going to be removing these bolts here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once we take those bolts out, we'll be able to kind of lift our subframe off, and then we'll start doing work as far as the body is concerned. As you can see, we have our subframe removed, and this is what you should be looking at. Now, on a side note, these screws here that you just removed, they're actually held in by little nuts on the other side that, once you're screwing them out, some of them might fall. As you can see, if you look, you can see some of them sitting in there still, while others are missing, which means they fell down. They'll be on the ground or on the table, whatever you're working on, underneath the car. And once you flip it back over, once you lift it, you'll be able to find them. However, we won't be using them again, so no worries. So we're going to be using this 3/4, it's like 3/4 by 3/4 aluminum square tubing by 3 feet. You could get this from your local hardware store, Home Depot or anything like that. And also, we're going to be using these screws. They're 1/4 inch by 4 inches, and that's what we're going to need to make our spacers and replace these stock screws. By now, you're probably wondering, okay, what do I need a 3/4 by 3/4 inch aluminum square tube for? Well, I will be using those as spacers to kind of raise our subframe up off of the body itself. So the next step is taking your aluminum tubing and measuring out 2-inch intervals. And we're going to do that 4 times to cut 4 pieces 2 inches long. Kids, don't try this at home. That's my disclaimer. And, of course, wear safety goggles, safety glasses, gloves, stuff like that to protect yourself. You don't want to get hurt while trying to do this. And yeah. Next, we're going to come back over here. First things first, I got to use a small screwdriver to pop those out. And then we're going to come in with a 1/4 inch drill bit and just kind of drill through all 4 so we could get our screws through. These will be replacing the original screws. Now that we have our holes drilled out to 1/4 inch, as far as the frame, you don't have to worry about drilling out the holes for a 1/4 inch because they already are actually a 1/4 inch, so you'll be good. So the next thing is now we're going to run these screws through the frame. You can use a washer if you want or not. It's metal, so it really doesn't make a difference. Now, before we do go ahead and put the frame back on, we do need to remove these clips and get our little steering shaft out. Because what's going to happen is we're going to install this reverse. So it's going to be actually flipped. Okay, so now we're going to take our 4 spacers, place them above the holes, and yes, this is what they're for. So they're going to go in right here. Then we're going to take our freshly flipped subframe and steering arm, and we're going to put our screws in. And these screws, once again, are 1/4 inch by 3.5 inches. So drop those in, and then we line them up now with the holes and drop them in. Oh, and make sure you have your steering arm in at the same time. Do not want to forget that, because then you'll be pulling it back off just to put that back in. And there you go. So now that we have our subframe kind of back in place, we're gonna have to flip the car back over so we could throw these 1/4 inch washers on, and then put our lock washers, or I mean our lock nuts, these nuts. I'd like to take this time to basically address the fact that once you flip the car back over, you could remove those two screws out of the dashboard, and you'll be able to see what you're doing better without the dashboard actually being in your way when you're trying to catch the nut on top of the screws that you push through. However, I'm just doing it the difficult way because I just don't feel like taking the dashboard screws back out. It's only two screws, but whatever. Also, for extra stability, I would recommend you use quarter-inch washers. You don't necessarily have to use it on the outside on the frame, but I would recommend you use it on the inside where the plastic is for, like I said, additional stability. Once you caught the nuts onto the screw, you can go ahead and tighten it up using a ratchet and a wrench. These are 11 millimeter socket and an 11 millimeter wrench. So let's tighten everything up now. And once everything is tightened up, this is how it should be looking. I know it's hard to see, but there you go. And then there should be two on either sides that you can't see on camera. This is how we should be looking underneath with our spacers and our steering shaft flipped. That's how it should be looking. So now we're just going to try to get our wheel on, and we're going to see how low we are. All right, so we're going to try to get our wheel on. Unfortunately, I may have gone a little too low on this drop. I was actually trying to be more conservative and bring it about, maybe here. And that comes down to basically these spacers. Now, I had you guys cut 2-inch spacers, and that's what brings it down to this height. Now, if you need it to be a little bit higher, what you need to do is make these spacers, depending on how much higher you want it, you could go 2 1/4 or 2 1/2, and that could get you, kind of sitting flush on the wheel well. Right now, 2 inches brought me a little bit too low. I could still force the wheel on, no problem. But now when the turning it comes into play, it might hit around this area right here. Not sure if you can really see it, but there's a little plastic piece right here that holds the bumper on where the screw goes. You could kind of shave that off a little bit with a blade or a Dremel, and it will give you your turning clearance. So it's not really an issue. So this is a 2-inch spacer. But like I said, if you want to go higher, you could go 2 1/4 or 2 1/2. If you want to go lower, then you go 1 3/4 inches or less. All right, so let's try to force this wheel on. And what you're gonna do basically is you kind of catch it on the inside, and then you just kind of turn it, and the fender will kind of flex out as you're turning, and it will pop right in. And you just pop this little plastic piece right back in, and voila, your wheel's on. So we're gonna do that for the other side, and then we're gonna move on to the rear. Okay, so now that I have both sides on the front, as you can see, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna flip the car back over, and we're gonna do the rear, which is a lot easier. So let's get this flipped back over. Now the thing about the rear is what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna simply drill new holes higher than the original holes. But first we'll have to kind of take note of how high it was, which originally when I measured it, it was about 1 1/4 inches, 1.5 inches. So we're gonna have to kind of remeasure it just to double check and see, how low we really want to go down with the rear. The front, I would say we went down about 1 inch and a half maybe. So let's double check it, and then we're gonna get into drilling our new holes. I'm gonna start by just kind of putting the wheels back on. Only on one side though. We don't need both sides. And then grab my tape measure. And basically whatever measurement we take from here is what we will be doing. This is what we have. It's about between 1.25 and 1.5 inches. Now, in order for me to make it even with the front, I might have to go down a little bit over or a little bit under 1.5 inches. So I will be doing that in between mark. So I'm going to mark my hole accordingly. Okay, so we once again remove the wheel. We're going to remove our motors, which I already disconnected on both sides. And we're going to remove our shaft, which just slides right out. And we'll place that on the table over here. And then now we kind of come back in with our tape measure, and we're going to go a little bit above or a little bit under 1.5 inches. So now when you measure this, you kind of want to measure it halfway through the hole. You don't want to measure it from here. You do not want to measure it from this part. You want to measure it from here, because this is halfway off your circle. If you measure it from here, you're going to go too low. You're going to go lower than intended. So I will basically place my tape measure here, and 1.5 inches is about right here. But this is where we want it. So that's where I'm going to mark my hole. So there's my mark. And what I kind of do is I kind of do it across. I'll make a line across on both sides. And then when I'll come back in, I'll kind of line it up as much as I can with this. And then I'll do a straight line down, and that will give me my center lined up with this. So I made my mark, as you can see, a little under 1.5 inches. And then, so it's in between 1.25 inches and 1.5 inches. So there it is. X marks the spot. We'll be drilling right there. And the drill bit we'll be using will be this. It's a 15-30 seconds. You don't want to go too big and make the hole loose. You want to keep everything as tight as possible. So this is slightly under the size of the shaft, if not the same size. So you gotta kind of have to force it in a little bit, but that's the way you want it. You want it to be as tight as possible. As you can see, there's our hole. But now a problem that a lot of people run into is that the drill bit can't go through both sides, where it has to go through here, come through the middle here, through this part, and then go out the other side. So you could drill both outside holes, but the inside is where it gets really tricky and somewhat messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to mark again my little over 1.5 inches mark on both sides, and then I'm going to try to catch the drill at an angle. Unless your drill bit is maybe 6 inches or more, you won't be able to just drill right through. So you're going to have to try to catch it at an angle. It might get a little bit messy, and it might not be, very aligned, but all you honestly just need is just to get a hole in there so the shaft could go all the way through, and everything else would be okay. Okay, so after I go in and I made my marks, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to drill it at an angle like this, but aim for the mark at the same time. Now I use the shaft, the little channel for the shaft as a guide. So I'll hold it like this, line it up as much as I can, as you can see, hold it against my mark, and then I'll try to drill through using the channel as a guide to keeping the drill from, going all over the place or anything crazy like that. All right, so here we go. And that will be your center hole. And what I would do is come on the other side now and do my other mark using this channel as a guide again. Line it up with my mark. And that's how we should look once our holes are drilled and our shaft is through the middle and then through the other side. And like I said, in here, it won't be very pretty. The good news is it's unseen. And don't worry if your marks are slightly off when you drill the hole. You could kind of just keep drilling around there. You know, it doesn't matter if the hole gets bigger or whatever until you could get that shaft straight through, because the two outer holes are the most important holes. So as long as those two holes are fine and leveled, the middle, it doesn't matter. It just, in the middle is a little bit of extra support, but it's not necessary. Once you got your holes drilled in the rear, we're gonna add like an L bracket, drill a hole through the L bracket, and kind of put it on as extra stability, drilling it to the plastic body of the car to help reinforce those holes that we just drilled into. So this is the L bracket I'll be using. It's a 3x3 aluminum L bracket, and all I need it to be is about 2 inches wide, just to cover this area here. So I'm gonna cut two 2-inch wide slices out of this, and then we're gonna measure our holes, mark it, and drill it. And this is gonna be the additional reinforcement we need to hold our rear up. Okay, now that we have our pieces cut, as you can see, once again, 3x3 aluminum L bracket. Doesn't necessarily have to be a 3x3. It could be like a 3x2 or anything like that, or maybe even 2x2. I just do 3 just in case, you know, the hole might be too high and the bracket might be too short. So 3 is a safe way to go. Now, what we do is we take it and we kind of hold it next to our shaft, and we can kind of mark how far down we need to drill our hole. And we'll be doing this for both sides. All right, so this is about here. So we're gonna put our line across this way, and then we're gonna bring it up top here and kind of put our line lined up with the shaft. So we'll be drilling our hole around this area here, and we're gonna do the same thing for the other side. So once we have our marks made for our holes for the shaft, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add about 3 additional holes, about 3/16 inch big, above this hole on both shafts, and then we're gonna go under about right here and right here to kind of screw it into the body for additional stability. So let me go ahead and do that so you can see what I'm talking about. And these are our holes once we've drilled them. As you can see, I have a small one above and then 2 underneath, and they're offset for a reason also. And with these holes, this one right here, I went up to a 1/2 inch drill bit, because you want it slightly bigger, because the shaft you could force through the plastic, but it's gonna be kind of a fight to force it through here. So I went a size up. Like I said, these are just for additional stability, so this is not a big deal to go a size bigger. Now, in order for me to get those plates on, I'm going to have to take my box cutter or whatever you have available to cut, and you got to take this off. So you got to kind of on both sides, and do it for the other side also before you could actually get your plate on. This is how we look once it's cut. So both sides cut off with a box cutter, and we still have our shaft in place. So now we just got to go over here, grab our plates, and kind of slide it on. And we're gonna do that for both sides. Also, if you take notice, the holes, I kind of cut it further back, as far back from the edge as possible, because there is a gap here, and you don't want to drill the holes here where it's just gonna go through. So you kind of want to hit the plastic. As you can see, I barely made it, but I made it. So that was something I kind of eyeballed. I didn't measure it. I would recommend you measure. Okay, and that's how it should look with both brackets on now. And once you have those in place, you could run some screws in the extra holes that we drilled to hold that in place also from moving around or sliding off or anything like that. If you don't have these type of screws, then you know you could, use self-tapping screws or whatever. Or you could just drill the hole to whatever size screws you have laying around or could use. So something to kind of hold the plate in place. That's how we should be looking once all of our screws are in. Both plates are on. I have one up top and two underneath. Now it's just to get the motors back on and put the wheel back on, and we'll be done. Okay, so we have both rear wheels back on. I do have to tell you, it's gonna be kind of hard to get them back on or get the pins back in, especially because of the plates that we put for stability, because it kind of kicks it out a little bit further than what the stock car usually sits. You don't necessarily have to use those stability plates. I just, like I said, I do it for extra stability just in case. Um, but if the child is, if you're not an adult trying to get in the car or anything like that, and you don't go over the weight limit of what's specified for the car, then you really don't need those plates, or nor do you have to worry about it. I just do it as an extra safety precaution for stability in the rear. But once you add those plates, you're going to have to fight with the wheels to get them back on, especially when it comes to the clips. So what I do is I will catch a clip on one side first, then I will push the shaft through and try to catch the other wheel, and then kind of tap it with a rubber mallet on the other side and force that clip in. So it's a bit of a fight, but you will get it. Trust me, if I could get it, you could get it. So once we got both clips on both sides, this is what your end results should look like. We have your two plates, both clips on both sides. And like I said, it's a bit of a fight, but it is possible to get on. Might be easier with two people, not sure. Of course, I did it myself, so if I could really do it myself, then I know you can also. Um, One thing I do want to note though is because we went down on the rear a little bit under inch and a half to try to match the front. Like I said, on the front we'll have to kind of cut a piece out for clearance because it's gonna scrub. If you could hear it for turning, and we're gonna have to do the same thing in the rear now. As you can see, there's a little screw that's sitting right here. We're gonna have to remove that screw and shave that piece down that it screws into. And we don't need to put that screw back. The bumper still will stay on. And that will avoid any kind of rubbing sound or anything, kind of making a sound as far as it being too low and rubbing and scrubbing and stuff like that. To completely avoid a situation like that, I would recommend not going as low as I just did. I mean, if you want to go low, you could go as low as you want, as long as you cut for clearance. But if you just want a simple drop without worrying about cutting down anything or shaving anything like that, then I would recommend for the spacers that we did in the front, you go maybe 2.5, and that should bring you, that should give you a good drop, not too low where it's scrubbing, and minimal if any wheel gap. And then on the rear, you could go down. We did a little bit on the 1.5 inch. I would do 1 inch even on the rear. So once you have the car flipped back over, you could kind of see how low we went. The back isn't as low as the front, but it's still low enough for it to possibly scrub. And the front is definitely low enough to scrub on turning. And there's a little bit of, wheel tucking going on, tire tucking. So, like I said, I wouldn't go as low as I did on the front. The spacers that I cut for the front were 2 inches. So you might want to cut like a 2 1/4 or a 2.5 just to raise up the front a little bit more. And on the rear, only do maybe a 1 inch or a little bit under a 1 1/4 inch drop for just to be safe. From here, we'll go ahead and we'll put our seat back in, connect all our motor wires and stuff like that. We'll put our windshield back on by, once again, removing the screws for the dashboard, popping that in. And then we will reinstall our steering wheel, and that's it. We'll be done as far as lowering this car. And here we are with the seat reinstalled, the steering wheel reinstalled, the dashboard, the windshield. This is your final product. Now, the best part about this is that there are other ways to go about lowering any of these cars. Actually, this is just one way that I've come up with, as far as, you know, I would say minimal work. You know, to some it might be a lot, I'm not sure, but this is how I do it. And you know, if you have an easier way, by all means do it that way. But I'm just giving you an idea, for those who don't know how to lower it or have no idea where to start. There you are. Also, this trick, if you want to call it a trick, or this way of going about it, is, you know, it's mainly for the R8 style car. But if you have a car that has a similar subframe setup as the Audi, as you know, that you could see, you could go about it the same way. You know, this is not only specified to this one type of car. You know, if you have a similar setup, you know, about 99% sure it will work for you also. So the only thing you have to mind is just your clearances, just to make sure you could turn and the car could fully function once you're done. You know, if you have to maybe cut, you know, a little bit of clearance or whatever, not a big deal. But yeah, like I said, you know, if you have a similar setup, it should work for your setup also, not necessarily only for the Audi R8 Kids Ride-On style car. So once again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate the you know, you taking the time out to watching this video, and you know, kind of following along with how I do certain things. I'm loving the feedback. You know, thank you guys for the comments. Thank you guys for the likes and subscription. I appreciate it all. And you know, if things keep going the way they're going, I'm just gonna keep sharing more and more. You know, because I'm eventually gonna get up to showing you how to do a full air ride build, simplified, of course, or as simple. You know, because I do have a million ways to go about that too. So I will show you, you know, a couple of ways to go about doing air ride on these cars eventually. But I am building up towards that. So thank you guys, and subscribe. Thank you.